All right. Welcome to another episode of the On with Shahan podcast. Today I have Isaiah Jackson, the author of Bitcoin and Black America, joining me today. He's also been featured on Forbes, CNBC, Fox Business, Yahoo Finance, Black Enterprise. And there's a new show. I think there's a new development of a show I want to talk to him about as well. But Isaiah, thanks so much for joining.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me. Glad to be here, man. Definitely.
Awesome. So Isaiah, like we were talking kind of before we jumped on here, I saw you speaking with Hotep Jesus, Max Kaiser. I saw your recent interview with Anthony Pompliano. You're definitely doing the circuit. I saw you on Squawk Box as well. Just love your interviews, love your style, love the simplicity that you explain Bitcoin and this really complex new asset class. So I'm a huge fan of yours. For those that don't know you, do you mind just giving a quick background of, how you got into the space and what you're up to now?
Absolutely. So I appreciate once again, following me and being a fan as well. Like I said, I appreciate that so much. But so I got into the space ironically. Someone who worked for a financial institution, my roommate, he came home and we were kicking around ideas about how to make more money. And like most people, that's what attracted me to Bitcoin because
Mm,
he said Bitcoin, and I didn't know much, but I do have a tech background. So
mm,
he was, in the finance world. So he was kind of like, I don't understand this tech. I don't even know what it is, what Bitcoin is. So
right.
he just like passed it off to me. I read the white paper, and Max Kaiser was the first video I ever saw about
Mm,
Bitcoin. So you know how passionate he is. So
yeah.
it's
He's
hard not
so,
to be. Yeah.
there was one where he said where it goes like people will go in at 1,000 and 3,000 and 10,000. I think it was that
Mhm,
video in particular. There was a
mhm.
montage of videos where they
Yep.
talked about how different people would enter the market at different parts of the adoption cycle. And he just made it make so much sense. And he's been so consistent. That's why I really like Max.
Oh yeah, man. And one of the funny things is he was one of the first people to tweet that the black community should buy Bitcoin, like in
Mm.
2011.
Wow.
And later somebody black came along and actually took that and ran with it myself. But
Mm.
yeah, that's how I got started. And one of the things that helped me get started was, just jumping in head first, because I think there's two people that enter the market really early. They're either
Mm.
really rich so they can afford it, or they
Right.
were really poor, so they have nothing to lose. I was on the
Mm.
poor spectrum. I was a
Mm.
teacher at the time, second lowest paying state in the U.S. So
Wow.
I was like, I'll take a shot.
What were you teaching at the time? What were
I
you
was
teaching?
teaching.
Yeah.
I was teaching high school scientific visualization and game
Wow.
art design.
Wow.
So yeah, I was 23. I had a 20-year-old in my class, which is
Mm.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I was fresh out of college, just getting a first job, and I've used that as sort of leverage to get an IT job because I just basically studied more, got more certifications. So yeah, that was my background, and because I wasn't making a lot of money, I was like, let's see if there's something that could help. And Bitcoin, it's funny, your first time investing, you should never make a lot of profit because you
Mm.
always think, oh, I'm super smart. I know what I'm doing. And I invested, if you look at the charts, I actually bought two Bitcoins back in October 2013. And if you look at
Wow.
the charts, the very next month, the end of the month, beginning of December, the price went to like 1100. So
Mm.
I'm, in my mind, I'm like, well, this is going to go up forever. My financial virginity basically. I didn't understand. I didn't understand. I had stocks before from like when I was like 19, 20, but I didn't really pay attention. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna be rich one day. I'm picking out my Lambos like some people are now. And it was funny because at that time it was so, oh man, it was like multi-level marketing scheme, Ponzi scheme. It's for criminals. Silk Road was around.
Oh yeah.
Mount Gox was around. So the way I started was I basically started like really from the mud, where you had to have like a wallet that file.
Mm.
For those of you who know what that is, on your computer to have a wallet. So I started from there, and I'm so glad to see the industry where it is now.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And I saw you had a Twitter post from 2019 at Howard University when you had one attendee in the audience. That actually really resonated with me. And I'm actually a big fan of comedy. I would imagine you are too, because a lot of people in
Yeah.
this industry just have like a common wavelength of thinking. But I think of like comedians on podcasts talking about how they like did comedy at a bowling alley or some birthday party or some corporate gig while people were talking in the background. And
Hmm.
then where they got to today, which means they're really passionate about it. And at the same time, when you were talking about 2019, that was probably after the hype cycle, maybe in between cycles, and it's still early and whatnot. So
Mhm.
there's different stages that you've seen this. So both from like a, I guess from a mindset perspective and how you see other people's mindsets shifting, what is like some of the major changes you see like in 2021 versus at Howard when you were speaking to one person in 2019?
Well, you know, it's funny. I do want to mention, I actually did stand up for 5 years.
Oh, really?
Um, yes, from the age of 19 to 24. So I was actually doing stand up when I started teaching.
Wow.
So the talking to one person in a crowd and it's like people at the bar, that was nothing. That's why it's funny teaching Bitcoin. I was like, this is easy. I don't have to. I don't have
Right.
to make anybody laugh. This is
Right.
easy. I just got to convince somebody about the best money ever created. Oh, this is so talking to one person. You know, like you said, a lot of people are on that same wavelength.
Mm,
I was used to it because if you look at it, I was a teacher, I did stand up, and for years I worked in summer camps with kids. So I
mm,
probably worked three of the hardest jobs as far as speaking.
right.
So talking about Bitcoin is a breeze. But yes, to get to the original question, one of the changes that I've seen since then, and I write about this in my second book, is just awareness. The education is so much better because when I first started, you had to scramble to find something on Bitcoin Talk, on
Wow.
Reddit. You had to go to meetups. You had to go to meetups to meet
Mm,
people to get information. Now, Google, I believe somebody who gets into space now can learn as much in 6 months as it took me 8 years to learn, simply because the information is out there. There's more
mm,
exchanges. There's more YouTube videos and explanations and tutorials. I started making tutorials because there were none out there. I was like,
right.
I don't know how to do it, so I'll try it and do it myself. So that's the biggest change I see. A lot of more awareness. I think the education portion of it is coming because people are aware of it, but they don't really know what they're doing. So that's where people like myself, yourself, come into play. So I think the awareness has changed a lot, and I think the education portion is happening now.
Yeah, and that's why I think you're such a special influence in the community because your mastery of the subject and the simplicity in which you bring it down to, that's often the problem I have with like older people I speak to, let's say in my family,
Mhm.
for example. It's just like it's just way too much for them to absorb. But the
Yeah.
way that you talk about it, I think that's so much needed. And all the user experience kind of changes that we're going to see. I shouldn't need to know what the wallet address is or any of that stuff, private key,
Mhm.
public key. There should be an easy way to do all of this, accomplishing the same stuff, and the same
Exactly.
security measures. So I find that very interesting. And then also in 2021, I think a big change. I've been following Michael Saylor. I think he's a great influence in the community, and he's just a fun follow. First week of February, I think you tweeted about this as well, but they're doing a big summit for the institutional investors. BlackRock, I think, will be there. A lot of major corporations that they don't want to name. Do you think 2021 is the year of the institutions coming in, and how do you think that's going to disrupt the flow of the community and the industry?
So yeah, I believe this is the year for institutions for two main reasons. One, that conference that Saylor's having, all of those companies that he won't name,
Mm,
there's a reason why they're using his playbook. They're not showing up for no reason. Corporations don't waste time like that. So
mm,
that's one thing. For two, the amount of increase in his stock price, him,
right.
Square, every company that even if they don't want to own Bitcoin, directly, they will look and say, well, their stock price went up 400% last year. I mean, if
Yeah.
it's that easy, which technically right now it is, if you just say we're putting Bitcoin in our treasury, I think we just saw one company, Marathon, just did that. Their stock jumped, I think 280% or something like that over a week,
Mm,
just because they bought $100 million worth of Bitcoin. So I think that is definitely an indicator that institutions are here. They're already buying, in my opinion, but some of the other bigger ones like BlackRock, like you said, they're about to get involved. Actually, they gave the order out that they can trade Bitcoin futures, but they can't start till after the 31st. So that's one of the reasons why I think we see the price going down a little bit because they want to get it at cheaper prices. And then they're having this conference first week of February. Big coincidence, huh? And then
yeah.
all of a sudden, in my
Seriously.
opinion, exactly, it's not a
Yeah.
coincidence. There's
Yeah.
no more coincidences, in my opinion, in the Bitcoin space. The fact that they put that news out, the price tank, and now they're buying, in my opinion, at 10%, 15% cheaper. Once they have this conference and it's more bullish, people try to front run it. I think Bitcoin will definitely take off this year. I think 100K is actually kind of conservative, only because FOMO is, you can say what FOMO is before it happens, but Bitcoin FOMO is different because we're not talking about a stock that people are going to eventually sell for cash. We're talking about an asset some people may never sell. Like myself, I have Bitcoin I'm never going to sell. So when you throw that in with a supply shock, with corporations getting in,
Yeah,
I think we're going
same.
to see some
Yeah,
fireworks this year. And even retail people that want to sell, the education that we're doing is all about dollar cost averaging, not worrying about the price and then keeping it. So there's not going to be that many more people that want to sell at a certain point. So, and also the tax implications. Now that people know capital gains tax, if you try to flip it quick, you have to pay that tax,
right.
15% on, of what you made. But if you hold it long term, you don't have to pay anything as long as you hold it. So and that's another incentive to hold it. So I think 100K is pretty conservative, but this is definitely the year for institutions.
Yeah, and you've mentioned this on other podcasts, and I think there is some urgency in this round, but don't FOMO in, don't wait for the price to go up. But there's other
Yeah.
instruments you mentioned that I really like too. Like I had Alex Mashinsky on here. I know you
Hmm.
spoke with him.
Yep.
You can gain interest by holding your Bitcoin. There could be an income stream that you
Hmm.
can create there. Another thing you mentioned on another podcast was like Lowly or other tools like that where you can earn Bitcoin as interest. You mentioned you spend a lot of money on eating food, and
Hmm.
DoorDash or whatnot. You can gain interest on that too with the credit card purchases. So there's a lot of ways I think there are to gain interest or buy Bitcoin without having to make huge bets. But I think at the very least, I've made this point. I know you've made this point before. I think just putting a little bit of money in, this goes for stocks too, allows you to just kind of watch the stock, watch how it moves. It's a very volatile asset, and you'll kind of get used to the big swings that are involved in Bitcoin. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. And if you are scared right now, you probably don't need to be in Bitcoin. A
Yeah.
20, a 25-30% drop, that's just a Tuesday, man. That's
Yeah.
just another Tuesday in Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I was going to say is, in addition to the institutions, I don't know if you saw this news, but Pakistan is now mining Bitcoin.
Hmm.
And there's other countries I think will get in. My parents are from Lebanon. I'm Armenian, but my parents lived in Lebanon. They came from there to here.
Hmm.
And in Lebanon, there's hyperinflation similar to Venezuela. So Bitcoin is a great place for store of value, and you're seeing adoption there too. And then the other thing that is recent in the news is Chamath. He's from California.
My man
And
Chamath. Yeah.
yeah, I love Chamath. I've been a big follower
Hmm.
of Chamath. I'm from California. I'm in LA. So,
Hmm.
I would love to have him, and he's pro Bitcoin. He's talking about
Hmm.
0% tax. Do you think like California could be a spearhead to this? I mean, do you see states adopting before like you see big moves in the federal government?
Absolutely. And I think they have a better chance at doing it at the state level than federally. They move very slow at the federal level. But at the state level, I lived in LA for 3 years before I
Mm.
moved here to Charlotte. And thinking of maybe going back. If he's elected governor, I'm going back because the zero
Hell
percent
yeah.
tax, zero
Yeah.
percent tax is great, and he's a Bitcoiner. And I think a lot of the issues that we deal with in our monetary system, if Bitcoin becomes a standard, you'll start to see those things fall apart. So yes, I think states will start. And I actually had a conversation with a guy in Miami. He just interviewed Mayor Suarez, who's looking at putting 1% of
Mm.
the city's budget into cryptocurrency. These people are not having these conversations for nothing. And I think when you see places like Wyoming, who's taking a blockchain standard and maybe having a sandbox for companies, they're going to attract a lot of talent.
Right.
California, same thing. They already have Silicon Valley. They already have Southern California, which is a bunch of famous people who can market it.
Mm.
That's like a match made in heaven. California should be the biggest Bitcoin state easily, and especially with New York, being Wall Street, they're basically regulating themselves out of out of the market. I mean, everybody has to get a bit license. That's stupid. So I think there are states that will do it first, and I think as well as countries, like you said with Pakistan. I'm glad you brought that up because I think a lot of people in the U.S. are very spoiled. They think, hey, it's just an investment that makes me money over time. And
Right.
then I try to remind them that I have friends in Botswana, in Ghana, in the Dominican Republic, in places where, and people in Venezuela that I know, where hyperinflation happens, that Bitcoin's volatility is actually less than their local currency. So they're using it as a spending, a peer to peer, the way it was in the white paper originally. So it's not just something you can buy
Mm.
and later sell for cash. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I think once people realize that, once business owners make a decision like, hey, we would rather accept Bitcoin, forget the
Mm.
public treasury, we're just going to accept it on the front end. What
Right.
will happen when you have to use Bitcoin?
Mm.
That's what I think these states are going to sort of kick into gear. If the incentive to use or to save in Bitcoin becomes profitable, I think every state will do it. I mean, imagine a state like Alabama putting some of their state treasury into Bitcoin and
Right.
then catching up. You know what I mean? Like they can catch up with New York because, you know, at the COVID time period, New York people are leaving. The economy is getting overtaxed. I mean,
Mm.
you could go somewhere like that and you could actually basically make the same money they are just by attracting the right businesses. So I love the idea that states are getting involved, and I would rather states have that law than in federal because I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
I agree with you. And I think Ohio was accepting Bitcoin at one
Ohio
point. I forgot
for
what
tax
happened with it. Yeah,
tax
for
payments. Yeah.
tax
Hmm.
payments. Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. Yeah, and I think the mayor of Miami. It's interesting to hear more about that. I want to talk to you about Bitcoin in Black America specifically. You mentioned other countries like Ghana. I want to bring up Armenia too. Like I work with a lot of Armenian startups. Armenia is in like a very war zone area. It's very tough. It's like a developing nation, and there's some tough parts to it, and the government is not very stable. So something like this in a store of value in an unconfiscatable type of asset like Bitcoin is super interesting, and that's what kind of like connection with me with Armenia, which you were talking about Bitcoin in Black America. It's very hard to bank Armenians. There aren't a lot of banks there anyways, and
Hmm.
even if there are, with the instability, there's all that risk you have too. So I'd love to hear about kind of your solution for Black America using Bitcoin, other forms of DeFi, cryptocurrencies to help solve this problem.
Absolutely. So first, shout out to my Armenian brothers in LA at the coffee shop on Melrose. I used to talk to about Bitcoin. I used to talk to
Hell
about
yeah.
Bitcoin all the time,
Oh,
all the
that's
time. So
hilarious.
yeah, and another thing, one of the things they mentioned was they were very cash based. So
Hmm.
this looked like a better option to them because it's better security. You're not carrying around loads of cash. And as far as keeping your or preserving your wealth, Bitcoin was better. So shout out to them.
Right.
But yes, Bitcoin in Black America. Some of the things that I write about in the book, about 80% of it applies to everybody, but there are some things that are very specific to our community. For example, I think group economics has not been practiced in our community effectively for a number of reasons. One, when we did practice group economics, racist white people came and burnt it to the ground.
Hmm.
Black Wall Streets in Tulsa, Wilmington, Florida, all of these things instill fear in a lot of our grandparents and great grandparents to the point
Hmm.
where they didn't even believe that we should have our own communities. Now, if you're an immigrant family, this sounds crazy. I mean,
Hmm.
if you're in LA, Chinatown, Koreatown, Little Armenia, Little Ethiopia, all of these communities relied on group economics. And I
Hmm.
think that for Black people, we could kill two birds with one stone. We need to practice group economics and we need a better money system. Bitcoin does that. And that's why I presented it. And I think that a lot of the solutions, for example, like you mentioned, DeFi, decentralized finance, we're not asking for handouts from anybody. I don't know anybody that just give me stuff. But DeFi gives you the ability to get the loans as a business or as a or individual without all of the BS in between. You don't
Hmm.
need to care about my zip code or
Hmm.
whatever. I have the collateral. Can I get the cash? That's
Hmm.
it. And DeFi, for those who are listening who may not understand decentralized finance, you have the ability to use cryptocurrency as collateral for cash loans. So as a business, you can actually say, hey, we're keeping Bitcoin in our treasury. All right, we have 100,000 worth of Bitcoin. Let's get a $50,000 cash loan so we can make repairs to our building. You pay that loan back, you get your Bitcoin back. So you don't even have to spend it anymore. And also, if you're a business, you can actually write off the interest that you paid on that loan. So if
Hmm.
you're a business, ask your CPA about that. So these are all things that I think the Black community could take advantage of, and any community that feels disenfranchised by the current economic system can use decentralized finance, can use different cryptocurrencies for transactions. I think Monero is great for privacy.
Hmm.
I think if people need to exercise privacy, if one group needs to do it, it's the Black community because everything we do is a microscope on it. Oh, what are they doing over there?
Hmm.
Because it's seen as, okay, they're trying to take over, or they may be doing this. And if you need any example, Black people march in the streets in DC, thousands of cops.
Hmm.
A few hundred white dudes show up, they just get let into the White House.
Right.
Like, if we do anything, the microscope is on us. So I think
Right.
privacy coins could help with private. If you want to do it, privacy is a right. So I think all of these things come into play. And I think, I explained that in the first and second edition of the book. And I think every community can benefit from reading and using it in their community because it's based on around group economics and how we can help each other.
100%. And I'll make sure to put the link to that. I need to buy it myself and read it. I've watched all your interviews. I don't like to fake that I read anything, but
I got
that's
you.
on my
Yeah.
that's on my list. I really want to read it. I've been fascinated with your interviews. Been trying to watch every one of the ones that I can.
Mhm.
So I had a couple other questions for you. So besides Bitcoin, and I know you're really into Bitcoin cryptocurrencies, but you're also a technologist.
Mhm.
I'm always really interested because I just think Bitcoin people are some of the most interesting people. So I'm interested to see what they're interested in. But what are
Mhm.
the other disruptive technologies that you are in, like looking into, tracking? Like I like stuff like, for example, flying cars, autonomous cars, those kind of things. Are there things like that that are piquing your interest that you've been following?
Yes. So artificial intelligence, I've actually worked with that since college,
Mm,
and that's always been like a hobby of mine to check in intelligence community and how it's used. And one of the things that interests me, of course, artificial intelligence and crypto together is going to be mind blowing, I think, in 10, 20 years. But I think currently what we're starting to see is that we're building machines and computers that are smarter than us. And we're starting to see it in pop culture, which is crazy to me. Like there was a movie of a guy, he fell in love with his computer. You
mm,
know what I mean? And it seemed kind of crazy, but at a certain point, with a lot of the
mhm.
isolation people going on,
Yeah.
artificial intelligence is getting smart enough where you can build that perfect person and have conversations with them. And I think it's very interesting to see the, I guess, the link between humans and artificial intelligence or robots, because we've talked about it for years. But the fact that we always have a phone on us is like the first step, because people are like, oh, I'd never get a chip in me, or I'd never get, some sort of bio hardware. And I think that one of the things that's most interesting is that we're literally combining ourselves with technology as we speak. I mean, Neuralink from Elon Musk is that I don't even know how to describe it, but that would be crazy if your thoughts you could actually become smarter and basically have your own search engine in your head. That I mean, that's mind blowing. So things like that I always pay attention to, and I think my guide for that is the book 1984.
Mm.
After reading that book and thinking this will never happen, and then seeing all this stuff happen, I'm
Yeah.
like, everything in science fiction is probably
Right.
about to happen.
Right.
Watching old Star Trek movies and seeing the iPad and then seeing it now, it's like it's coming. So now that I see it, like I said, in pop culture, I think that is what's happening.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So if Elon Musk calls you and he says, "Hey, I put Tesla, SpaceX reserves in, will you be one of the first adopters of the Neuralink?" Would you say yes?
If he puts his reserves in what, in
In
Bitcoin?
Bitcoin?
Oh man, I think I'd take one for the team.
You
I'd
think you
do it.
take one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd do it just
Yeah.
because it'd be awesome to be one of the first to do it if the payoff was basically Bitcoin's going to $10 million overnight.
Right. Right.
Because as soon as he announced it,
Yeah.
everybody's gonna be buying, nobody's gonna sell. So
Right.
yeah, I think it'd be take one for the team. But yeah, that would
Yeah.
be great. I am skeptical though. I don't do anything first round,
Yes.
so I would be skeptical, but I'd try it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Because I've been following a lot of this stuff too. Because I think I follow Futurism. I don't know if you follow them, but they had
Mm-hmm.
the first bionic eye
Mm-hmm.
that they implanted into somebody. There's so many things, like you were saying, the science fiction, literally anything you can think of,
Mm-hmm.
flying cars. Like I'm working with a company. I'm a startup consultant as well. They're doing
Mm-hmm.
long range wireless energy transmission, like miles of
Wow.
distance, like Nikola Tesla.
Wow.
So like I'm working with them. They're called Emrod. Amazing technology, but it's because the reason why they're able to do it now is because material science has caught up
Mm-hmm.
to the science, right? So then
Yep.
now they can actually implement it, which I think is really interesting. If you look at like nanotechnology,
Mm-hmm.
all these different things that are coming into life, it's like all the things that we've thought of, now we have the machines, the materials, all those things, the computing power to do all those things, which is going to be super interesting. So I'm excited, scared, all at the
Yeah.
same time,
All at the same time.
uh, because like you look at the world. I mean, the Bitcoin bull case right now is because the world is crumbling. So you have
Mm-hmm.
this technology rise plus the world kind of crumbling, and the institutions that you had so much trust in don't really have as much trust as you think they do. And I think that's what Bitcoin taught me the most in, is like everything you thought was the way it was is actually
Nope.
not that way at all. I don't know if you've had the
At
same
all.
experience.
Oh man, the emperor has no clothes, brother.
Yeah.
Trust me. I tell people this all the time. To be in Bitcoin, it changes your mindset, because as soon as you question the money system, which is the foundation for basically everything, media, politics, that's the foundation. Once you change your mindset about that, you question everything. And I forget the name of the effect, but somebody told me about it, that somebody who's an expert, they'll read about it in the newspaper and they'll be like, oh, that's trash. That doesn't make any sense. But then they'll read everything else in the newspaper and take it at face value. And I think that's what people are starting to change, is that once you read about Bitcoin, you're like, okay, now I know the media plays tricks. I know they play games. I know that they lie, the banks lie and then they actually invest on the back end. What else are they lying about? Then you start going into,
Yeah.
okay, well, these politicians don't make much sense. Okay, well, maybe religion didn't make as much sense as it used to. Or maybe,
Right.
what I thought about love and relationships is a lot of stuff, you question everything. And when you change that mindset, I think the generation that is growing up now is great, because in the crypto world, I love the fact that we call billionaires poor. We say have fun staying poor to billionaires.
Not like Mark
Because
Cuban, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
like Mark Cuban, we call Mark Cuban, but like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
and people that have 50 years of history, we don't care. Have fun staying poor. I love that, because in my opinion, you should have to prove what your worth is in that industry. And we have a lot of people taking a lot of advice, just listening to whatever. And in reality, when you pull the curtain back, you start seeing that doesn't make any sense. That's a fallacy. That's fake. And then once you start tearing those walls down, we can start to get to a place where there's more truth out there. People can figure out things for themselves. Being self-sovereign is becoming big, because you can learn what you need to learn to take care of yourself today by yourself. You don't even really need outside world anymore, just an internet connection. So I think all of that is happening at the same time. I love it. And I'd like to see people who were in power, who were basically just using the scare tactic of I'm in power against people shaking in their boots. I mean, Lloyd Blankfein is basically on CNBC like a little girl saying, hey, regulators, you should be hyperventilating at Bitcoin success. Like,
Right.
calm down. If I was a billionaire and I was that confident, I wouldn't even talk about Bitcoin. But you can tell it's changing the way people think, and they understand these 15, 20-year-old kids, they're coming for us. They're tired of hearing our lies, and man, it's time to pack it up. I mean, the Wall Street bros that
Yeah.
took over, they closed the hedge fund with GameStop by pushing GameStop through all of the short. Like, think about that for a second.
Yeah.
A group of regular people on Reddit actually outbid and closed down a hedge fund. It's the reverse. And Age of Aquarius, whatever people believe about that, everything's going to be upside down. People at the top are going to be at the bottom. People at the bottom are going to be at the top. So it's just more the same. And I'm glad I'm living during this era to see this change.
Oh man, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, yeah, it's just a complete flippening of what's going on. Like if you look 2017, Jamie Dimon, Bitcoin's a fraud. Now you're
Mm-hmm.
banking them and you want to find a vehicle to get people. It's just because you couldn't make money. And then once you start, I love the Twitter people that take a screenshot of the 2017 and then the 2020 headline.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
even sometimes it's the same author.
Yeah.
And you're just like, come on, like, do you guys have any integrity about any of
None.
this? I mean, it's ridiculous.
None. Nobody trusts journalists in the crypto world because we see you. Well, like I have so many articles from 2014 on. We
Yeah.
save all the receipts and we look back. I have a daily show. We do news every day. I've read the news every day for the last 4 years. So literally, I've never really seen this. I mean, I guess we saw it but didn't realize it, but I've never seen this contrast in opinions by the exact same journalists in the exact same thing. They were Bitcoin's in a bear market. Bitcoin's going to 50,000. Yeah,
Right.
you're going to be zero tomorrow. You're going to be a millionaire tomorrow. It's crazy, man.
Yeah. And that show you were talking about, so is that the new show, the Community Crypto show that you're talking about?
No, so the Gentleman of Crypto, that show is daily, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've been doing that since 2017. It'll be 4 years in April. So that show is just daily news and updates. My new show, Community Crypto, starring myself on CoinDesk TV, we will be basically doing what I've stated before, getting outside of the U.S. mindset and seeing how Bitcoin is used in local communities. And one of the things we're doing, we're linking with local meetup groups and talking about concepts in the Bitcoin and crypto space that they are interested in within their local community. So, for instance, like Botswana, places like Ukraine, places like New Hampshire, places outside of the big cities we always hear about, because those are the people with real use cases where they're like, we're using this to live off of. We use this for farmland, things like that. So that's what our show will feature. We have some great shows lined up looking at historically Black colleges and universities, blockchain groups. We're looking at the virtual reality space. We're looking at, the divide between traders and investors in different places, and how you can use it peer to peer for goods in places like Ghana, Botswana, like I've said before. So all of that is included in community crypto, and it'll be starting in February.
Yes, everyone make sure to check that out. And then Isaiah, any final thoughts for those that are kind of scared to get into the space, don't know how to get started, want to get in, hear about it all the time, but they just don't know what to do or how to get started. What should they do?
Oh yeah. So first thing, buy it. Get some skin in the game. On Cash App, you can buy $1 worth of Bitcoin. Buy it, get some skin in the game. Second thing is learn how to store it. All right. So you want to invest in either a hardware wallet or a cold wallet so that you can store your Bitcoin. No keys, no cheese. If you don't have the keys to your private wallet, you do not own it. All right. So make sure you store it. And then last but not least, find ways to earn it. You don't always have to buy Bitcoin. You can, I would say dollar cost average, but you can earn it. Like you stated before, Lolly, you get Bitcoin cashback rewards for buying things. Fold app, same thing. If you have a brick and mortar business, put a Bitcoin ATM in there. You get paid monthly just to have it. There's a lot of different ways to earn money, earn Bitcoin in this industry. So those are three things I would do. If you're scared, dip your toe in. You don't have to jump in head first like I did. You can dip your toe in, and there's plenty of information to help you along your way, including myself and you as well.
Absolutely. And don't go deep down the rabbit hole of altcoins. You will get crushed.
Oh man, you'll just circle right back to Bitcoin.
I say the same thing every time. So if I could bring someone new in, they start buying Bitcoin. They're like, oh, these ones are way cheaper. And I was like, oh no, here we go again.
That's unit bias. We got to start teaching people unit bias. I think dollar cost averaging, people start to realize we got to start showing people unit bias. Look, just because it's 50 cents, there's 300 million tokens.
Right, exactly.
You got to understand you're not buying as much as you think you are. So
yeah. And Isaiah, how do we follow you on different platforms? Make sure to follow your podcast. What should we do to follow you?
Absolutely. So on Twitter at Bitcoin Zay, ZAY. On Instagram, Bitcoin Zay LLC. On YouTube, The Gentleman of Crypto, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. And again, Community Crypto on CoinDesk. You can follow me there in February.
Great. Isaiah Jackson, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This was a fantastic conversation. I'd love to have another, podcast soon in the next few months.
Likewise, brother. Loved it, man. Appreciate you.
Awesome.